White teens mocked black girl at prom. Then she walked on stage. What unfolded next didn't just flip prom night, it rewrote the rules of the entire school. Nobody in that school expected Alicia Brown to walk through the doors of the prom that night, not because she was looking for trouble or because she was not part of the scene. No, the reason was far more raw. For girls like her, these big high school blowouts weren't about fashion or flirting. They were about survival. Survival in a place where black girls are too often erased, reduced, overlooked, as if being too visible means you don't quite belong. Alicia rolled out of bed long before the sun came up. 7 a.m., eyes half open, mind ready for the grind. She shuffled through a day packed like an overstuffed suitcase. First, the school hours, where everyone's hoping for applause, but she's just hoping not to be erased. Then straight to her shift at the volunteer center, where she shoveled floors and played guitar for elders, whose eyes glistened with stories but whose tongues had grown silent. After that, she was back to pick her little brother up. And trust me, that kid had more energy than the entire varsity football squad combined. When she finally sank into home that night, it wasn't to scroll through TikTok or anything nearly as trivial. No, her day ended with algebra books and flickering desk lights long after midnight because she didn't have time for dance outfits or style gossip. Yet somewhere between the vinyl-covered table and the nightstand lamp, something shifted. That volunteer center, the same one where she dropped sweat and tears picking up trays, presented her with a formal thank you letter, laminated with a ribbon. For the first time, it struck her that she had a right to be seen, not just as the East Side girl, but as someone who deserved to step into the spotlight, even if only for 4 hours on prom night. Someone who had earned the hush-worthy kind of respect that doesn't show up in bank statements or brand names. Now let's talk about that dress, sewn by Aunt Gracie, the aunt who didn't know how to hold her tongue when it counted and believed every stitch was armor against shame. The fabric cost exactly $6 a yard on clearance. Deep navy, like endless sky with none of the promises. On prom morning, Alicia stared at her reflection in that cracked mirror. Rubber sealants held it together, just like her. Hair neatly braided, lips bearing a modest gloss. She didn't look like a princess ready for a fairy tale. She looked like a warrior whose only mission was to stand tall, no matter what the night threw at her. Too pretty to blend in, too black to be embraced without a fight, Aunt Gracie murmured, adjusting the hem. Alicia drew in a breath that tasted like both fear and resolve. The walk to the school was a misadventure in and of itself. The bus ran late, Uber canceled at the last second. That 47-minute trek stung every part of her, legs burning, lungs working. During those steps, she replayed a montage of past slights, being told she got put on the prom list by mistake last year, the parent committee girls ignoring her fundraiser project, even the history teacher who slapped a C+ on her essay that later got recognized by the regional university. Each memory doubly confirmed just how much her presence stood out and how swiftly it turned uncomfortable for the people around her. When she entered the gym, transformed into a sea of glitter and balloons, she moved like someone marching onto a battlefield. The speakers thumped, strobes flickered, and there they were. The white girls gathered at the center table, gowns that cost more than Alicia's monthly rent, and leading the trio, Miss Prom Elite herself, Melissa Rowley, daughter of the high-powered attorney, wearing a smile so poised it made dirt look like a felony. Melissa caught Alicia's eye as if locking gazes with a familiar target. 1 second. Then that perfect salon-like contempt flickered across her lips. The kind of look you give someone who walked into your braiding chair unannounced. "Oh, Lord," Melissa voiced loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Someone's trying to be Cinderella without the glass slippers," Jade snorted beside her. "Or they just working the buffet shift?" The laughter was sharp, designed to cut. Amanda'd call it real, but in Alicia's world, it was the kind that says, "You don't belong." It was the sort of noise meant to remind you what place you have. Or don't. Alicia didn't snap back. She couldn't. Not here. Not now. She recognized that arguing with them would be like playing chess with a pigeon. The bird just trashes the pieces and struts off, thinking it's won. She pressed past, grabbed a seat on the opposite side of the room, dug out her pocket journal, the one she uses to jot scattered dreams and quiet hopes when no one's listening. The hem of her dress creased over her hip. She brushed the fabric, still dry for now. A few minutes later, she felt a familiar ripple in the air, compassion coming from the most unexpected source. Sarah rolled up beside her, sweet, resolute Sarah in her wheelchair, whom Alicia had been tutoring and mentoring every Saturday, teaching her to recite poems strong enough to rile up silence. "You're the prettiest girl here tonight," Sarah whispered, extending a tiny forearm-drawn card with a heart and rainbow scribbles. On it, "Your kindness is my light." In that moment, adrenaline pulsed through Alicia's veins. There it was, the reminder that comfort doesn't come from applause, but from being recognized by someone who sees beyond your skin. That was her purpose tonight, not the glitter or the stage or the crown that didn't exist yet. Then came the announcement. The host, tall guy with too much cologne, stepped to the center stage and boomed, "Attention graduates! It's time to announce the nominees for prom queen." A hush blanketed the room, and Alicia watched name after name roll past. Jade, Courtney, Lexi, each greeted by cheers, flashes, the celebration of privilege. Then, and Alicia Brown! The room flickered. People froze. Behind them, someone whispered, "You heard right." Melissa shot up from her seat, swift and certain, walking toward the stage in that smug way only someone born with expectation can summon. Alicia's heart pounded. She glanced at Sarah, who gave her a single nod. "Go, I'm here." And she walked across that gym floor like a march of ancestors, past curious faces with raised phones and eager cameras. No one clapped, but no one sat either. On stage, lined up against carefully polished backdrops, each girl was groomed to look the part, manicured, poised, untouchable. Then came Alicia's turn. "Now to continue tradition," the host trilled, "each nominee will share a few words on why she deserves this honor." One by one, the polished speeches, predictable platitudes. "Thank you, my friends, my family, my homies. This place means so much." Then the mic was thrust toward Alicia. She grasped the medal, cool, heavy. Expectation shifted. She swallowed deep, and just as she began, it happened. The world took notice. A bucket of soda came crashing down from the balcony above, drenching her dress, her shoulders, a sticky cascade of sugary humiliation. "Oh, I'm so sorry," a voice flared. Melissa looking down like the night had opened up. "Guess my hands are as clumsy as her fashion sense?" The laughter erupted, vindictive, loud. Phones poked forward like weapons. Some clapped, as if cheering dessert theatrics. Alicia remained rooted in place, mic trembling in her grasp, the sticky fabric weighing her down, her voice catching in her throat. But then she did the thing nobody saw coming. She straightened her spine, dipped her chin, and spoke. "I didn't come here for your crown. I came here tonight to remember who I am, even if half of you prefer pretending I'm not standing in front of you." The words cut the sound off in that crowded room. She was light striking through darkness. No thunder, no fanfare, no camera trick, just clarity. And as silence stretched, it carried her voice through that gym. It wasn't about the dress, $6 a yard turned into armor. It wasn't about the spotlight, but what spotlight can't burn away. It was about making yourself unmissable, even when the world wrongfully bets you will turn away. And in that pregnant pause, someone in the back, an older teacher, a janitor, a kid tired of staying quiet, started to clap. Only one at first, then another, and then a wave of applause rolled across the gym floor. Not because she was pretty enough for prom, but because she was strong enough to stand, soaked and undeterred. That's when everything changed. That's when history happens, Alicia thought later. If anyone in that auditorium thought Alicia Brown would drop the mic, run backstage in tears, lock herself in the nearest bathroom stall, and never show her face again, they were terribly mistaken. What stood there, soaking wet from soda, her dress clinging to her shoulder, its sticky fabric dragging slightly from the sugar, was not a defeated girl. It was a flame that didn't flicker in the wind of humiliation, a flame that grew right there under the real light. Not the soft, focused glow of stage spotlights, but the blinding, searing light of truth. Her voice didn't quiver. It rang, strong, clear, not loud, but vibrating with something deeper, like the walls could feel it. "You wanted me to feel ashamed," Alicia said, her tone slicing through the room like piano wire. "But you're too late. I've already walked through that fire." There was a pause, not for effect, but because the truth demanded a beat of silence. "I clean bedpans for grandmothers who haven't seen family in years. I change their sheets. I listen to them talk about things they're afraid to say out loud, sometimes their last words, and then I go home. No applause, no trophies, just silence. And you think I'd be embarrassed over a dress and some spilled soda?" The room didn't breathe. Alicia stood there, grime on her chest, a stain blooming at her hip, and spoke with such grounded clarity that even those who had just laughed moments before were stuck in place, unsure if they'd accidentally witnessed something holy. Melissa, who was still on the balcony, holding her empty soda bottle like a fading trophy, suddenly looked uncertain. Not ashamed, not yet, but uneasy. Like maybe this wasn't going to go the way it always did, where a snarky comment guaranteed laughs and people like Alicia disappeared quietly. Alicia continued. Her voice didn't shake, it sharpened. If you think this night was some blessing for me, if you think being here was a gift, then you've never had to fight for a single bite in your fridge. You've never opened it to find mustard and a water bottle and still gone to school acting like you had breakfast. The mic didn't fall. It didn't need to, because her words were the thunder. And the lightning? It was what came next. From the back of the auditorium, a single pair of hands began to clap. Not enthusiastically, purposefully. One clap, then two, then a rhythm, and then others joined. A father near the exit, a mother standing against the wall, a cluster of younger girls who had been too scared to dance earlier, worried they'd scuff their new shoes. The applause grew, not like a celebration, but like a protest, a rebellion against a culture that had too long rewarded cruelty and shamed integrity, against a room that had let too many black girls get laughed at, dismissed, erased. Then came movement. Mr. Reynolds, the biology teacher, tall, thin, always dressed like he walked out of a civil rights documentary, rose from his seat. People whispered that back in his college days, he marched, he organized, he stood his ground when it wasn't safe to. That night he stood again. He walked slowly to the stage, climbed the steps without a word, and took position beside Alicia. No flourish, no speech, just presence. When he did speak, it was with a voice weathered by years of watching injustice dress itself up as tradition. "Miss Brown," he said, "you just gave this entire room a lesson no microscope could ever reveal." There was a pause, not for drama, just reverence. The host, who up until now had relied on jokes and applause to keep the show rolling, now stood frozen behind the podium, sweat forming at his temples. His hands shuffled his note cards nervously, desperate to return to the script. Voting will begin in about 5 minutes." "No voting," said a voice from the side of the stage. It was Vice Principal Parks, a woman known for avoiding controversy like it was a bad rash. Careful, diplomatic, always hiding behind policies. But tonight, she stood with fire in her eyes. "This evening has already spoken." Across the room near the back, a phone camera gleamed red. Recording. Live stream. A local journalist, mother of one of the students, had gone live on Instagram just moments earlier. 13 viewers, then 300, then over 1,000. Comments flooded in. "Who is this queen? Somebody give her a crown right now." This is what real power looks like. Within minutes, the local news station Channel 6 had joined the stream. What they showed wasn't a prom. It was something closer to a reckoning. A girl drenched in soda, standing taller than anyone else in the room. A girl in a wheelchair at the base of the stage holding up a sign that read, "I'm proud of her." And 3 prom organizers standing at the side, frozen like shoplifters who just got caught on camera. And then came the moment. Sarah, the girl in the wheelchair, the same girl Alicia had helped read poetry every Saturday, leaned over and whispered something to her mom. Her mother, tall and soft-eyed, reached into her purse and handed her a small wrapped bundle. Sarah wheeled herself forward, package in hand. The entire room watched. When she reached the stage, she extended it up to Alicia. Inside, a paper crown, handmade from a candy wrapper, decorated with glitter and ink, crumpled slightly at the corners, but shining. "This is for you," Sarah whispered. "You're the real queen." Alicia didn't laugh. She didn't cry. Not yet. She bowed slightly, took the crown, not like it was charity, not like a consolation prize, but like a banner raised after a hard-fought battle. She placed it on her head. That's when the room broke. Applause erupted, not choreographed, not forced, real, surging. Even teachers who had sat quietly during the earlier chaos now clapped. Some stood. Melissa stormed out without a word. Jade followed. Abby remained behind, eyes locked on the floor. Suddenly, very quiet. Then the door opened again. Principal Lee entered the room. His tie loosened, his brow furrowed. He had missed the beginning, but what he saw now was clear. A crowd united around a girl most of them hadn't even noticed a week ago. A girl who, by refusing to shrink, had expanded everyone else's definition of dignity. He stepped to the microphone. The room quieted again. "I've been told what happened," he said slowly. "I didn't see it, but I see what's happening now." He turned toward Alicia. "On behalf of this school, I don't just recognize you as the rightful prom queen. I recognize you as something more. You are a leader. You said what no one else had the courage to say. You turned pain into purpose. And that is far more than any crown can offer. More applause, cameras down, phones forgotten. This was no longer about going viral. This was about seeing someone clearly for the first time. That live stream. It hit over 50,000 views by midnight. TikTok renamed it The Night Prom Turned Into a Revolution. But Alicia, she didn't care about the likes or views. When it was all over, she stepped off the stage, walked to Sarah, bent down and hugged her tightly. And that's when the tears came. Not from shame, but from release. From the weight of being unseen finally lifting. From the silence cracking open. From knowing deep down she'd never have to shrink again. Alicia sat alone in the corner of the locker room, right beneath the broken vent that rattled whenever someone slammed a door in the hallway. No one spoke to her. No one dared to. Her dress had dried by then, but it clung to her skin like the memory of what she'd just endured. Like a second layer of truth, too stubborn to peel off. She removed the paper crown and laid it gently on the bench beside her. That crown, it wasn't made of rhinestones or funded by popularity. It was jagged, fragile, and wrapped in the shimmer of a candy wrapper. But it was more real than anything the night had offered. That crown was earned, not bought. It was paid for with dignity, with standing humiliation, and standing tall anyway. But Alicia knew better than to confuse this moment for a finish line. Prom was no ending. It was an opening act. The world outside, it doesn't transform because of one speech, no matter how electric. Reality doesn't give standing ovations. Reality waits. It watches. It measures what's inside of you once the lights dim and the music cuts out. While the DJ inside kept spinning songs for the glitter-covered crowd and half-eaten cupcakes decorated the buffet table, Alicia was escorted by Principal Lee and two members of the school board down the quiet hall to the administrative wing. Their steps echoed like guilt down a corridor meant for order. They led her to the conference room, too cold, too official, with that big wooden table that always seemed more suited for silent meetings than human conversations. They called it a special meeting to address the incident, but Alicia had seen enough movies to recognize what this was. It wasn't about justice. It was about optics. Control the story, smooth the wrinkle, swallow the truth. Miss Brown, Principal Lee began, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief that did more acting than necessary, since the room was cool. We are deeply sorry for what occurred tonight. Your courage was admirable. However, there it was. That old familiar preamble to erasure. We are growing concerned about the scope of the video's spread. Local media outlets have already started reaching out for official comments. It's moving very quickly. Alicia tilted her head just slightly. Her voice, when it came, was ice. Controlled. Clean. You want me to apologize, she asked, for not staying silent? No, of course not, jumped in the assistant principal, her hands fluttering nervously like flags in the wind. It's just, perhaps there's a way to express these emotions without such intensity, without it being so public. Alicia stood up slowly. She didn't shout. She didn't gesture. But her presence filled that room in a way no school board meeting ever had. Her eyes, they weren't angry. They were ancestral. Like her grandmother's stare when someone at the corner store tried to slip an expired item into her grocery bag. It was a look that didn't ask for permission. I didn't ask to be filmed. I didn't ask to go viral. I'm not chasing attention, Alicia said, but I'm tired of pretending that being quiet is the right way to survive. I made a choice, and it wasn't about performance. It was about being seen, so I could finally breathe. The room was silent. One member cleared their throat. Another scribbled something meaningless on a legal pad. Nobody made eye contact. When Alicia stepped back into the hallway, the sound of her own footsteps felt louder. But she wasn't alone. A group of younger students, middle schoolers, still in their after-school choir sweaters, were passing by. They stopped, wide-eyed. Miss Alicia, one of them whispered, we made you a poster. She handed it over, cardboard glittering with effort. The words Black Girl Magic shimmered in pink sparkles, outlined in marker. Alicia didn't ask for it, didn't expect it, but she took it with both hands. Not for Instagram, not for some curated feed, for her bedroom wall, right next to the sticky note that read, Inspire, even when your voice shakes. By the time the night rolled into midnight, Alicia's name had already left the building, but not the story. The news was picking up speed. Local channels had cut together clips from the live stream. Teachers were interviewed. Students shared moments. Sarah's grandmother was shown with tears in her eyes, calling Alicia a lighthouse. But of course, not everyone was pleased. There's always a backlash when power shifts, even a little, especially from those used to holding it. The next day, Melissa dropped her own video. Sitting on a perfectly lit porch, with a tone so carefully neutral it might as well have been a spreadsheet, she stared into the camera and said, "I just wanted the night to be fun. Everyone jokes around. Why am I being punished for one moment? No apologies, no responsibility, just polished victimhood." The comment that got the most likes under her video said everything. When your privilege cracks and you try to glue it back with fake innocence? Meanwhile, Alicia's inbox was a storm. A journalist from the Washington Post wanted an interview. A student rep from a college leadership program in New York reached out. A nonprofit tagged her in a post saying, "This is what courage looks like." Her name wasn't just being shared, it was becoming a symbol. But symbols are vulnerable, especially when they still walk the same hallways where their value was once questioned. The next morning, Alicia showed up to school the same way she always did. Backpack over one shoulder, steps even, no security escort, no camera crew. Just her. The school building hadn't changed. Neither had the lockers or the cafeteria smell. But the eyes? They were different. Some avoided her, like her truth might be contagious. Others watched her, unsure, hoping maybe that she'd slip, hoping this was a phase, that she'd crack under pressure. At lunch, she skipped the cafeteria and headed for the library, her sanctuary. Between the shelves of worn-out encyclopedias and cracked-spine novels, she finally let herself rest. She sat in the corner, tucked between world history and poetry, and exhaled. Not a sob, not a collapse, just breath, shaky and real. Mr. Reynolds appeared as if summoned by silence. No fanfare, no clipboard, just a paper cup of tea and the kind of presence that says, "I see you," even in the quiet. "You know," he said, sitting beside her, "you didn't just tell the truth last night. You lived it, and that scares them more than any speech ever could, because now they can't pretend they didn't see." Alicia nodded. Not because she needed affirmation, but because it was good to hear someone say it out loud. Her eyes didn't leak, but the lump in her throat wasn't pain. It was the weight of knowing she couldn't go back, not to how it was before. Then it came, an email, first to the school's inbox, then forwarded directly to her. A scholarship, $25,000, for leadership in social justice and civic integrity. No essay required, no application. Just, "We saw the footage. We saw her. This is the one." She read it 3 times, then she printed it. Walked to the school's main hallway, straight to the bulletin board labeled "Our Achievements," and she pinned it right there, between last year's mathlete trophy photo and the Student of the Month headshots. Underneath it, she wrote in her best handwriting, "This is what happens when you don't step aside." Morning didn't start with the comforting hiss of a coffee maker. It began with headlines that slammed into Alicia like summer lightning. Teen girl turns prom into protest. From humiliation to honor, East Side student inspires nation. Black girl wears blue and breaks the rules of silence. Alicia stood at the small kitchen table, arms folded across her chest as her phone's screen glowed brighter and wilder with each passing notification, like embers catching fire in a windstorm. Fame, she reminded herself with an aching patience, is never comfortable. Fame waits in public, with no dimmer switch and no off button, and every moment becomes a spotlight perched over your head, waiting to expose even the smallest crack. "Girl, you're everywhere," Aunt Gracie said, pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the one with the gold-trimmed handle that glowed like a promise in the early light. CNN, BuzzFeed, even that white, she paused, shaking her head in that mama way of hers, blogger with the straight hair and no soul. "She's talking about you, too." Alicia exhaled slowly, not because she was worn out, but because the scale of it all was bigger than she had ever expected. "I just said I was done," she whispered. "Does that turn into the kind of news that broadcasts around the world?" Aunt Gracie's laughter was soft, sharp, and filled with both irony and pride. "That's the damn problem, child. When a black girl refuses to be quiet, suddenly it's news. For us, that shit is breakfast. That's the usual. We consume that every morning before the chores." Meanwhile, her old high school scrambled behind the scenes, trying to patch over the chaos in a batch of official-sounding statements. Press release, the school expresses deep regret, followed by watered-down promises, "We will review committee participation protocols." No names mentioned, no accountability, just the corporate sigh of damage control. But the world wasn't listening to them. The comments underneath the school's post read like a crusade. "Where are Melissa's apologies? Who let bullying go live? Why didn't security stop the soda dump? Was a teen cleaning lady the best they could do?" Later, the parents' meeting erupted in tension. Alicia's mother walked in, carried the morning paper with Alicia's face splashed across the front page. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She held the paper like a shield and looked at the school board with eyes that said she'd tear the building down before letting them lie. At the same time, Melissa dropped another video. Overproduced, vacant, oozing manufactured sorrow. I just wanted a night of fun. Everyone jokes. Why can't I joke too? Not a single apology. Not one word acknowledging what was said. Because truth, as Alicia knew, couldn't be hidden with makeup or tweaked in editing. It was a soul-deep thing, and there was no eraser for that. But Alicia, she didn't chase fame. She nurtured movement. She formed a group, girls from every corner of the school, from every background, all with the same fear, saying their truth and risking mockery. She called it not a club, but the Loud Girls Collective. Every Friday they met in the school library, among dusty history books and community hopes, to learn how to speak so people listen, even when no one else wants to hear. When the Root interviewed her, asking what victory meant for her, Alicia answered with cool clarity, "Victory isn't applause. Victory is when another girl walks onto that stage, and no one dares pour soda on her, because they know her worth too." In the weeks that followed, life kept changing, but didn't explode all at once. Life changed in discreet letters arriving in her inbox. "Congratulations! You have been awarded a full-ride scholarship for leadership in human rights and social justice. No essay required, no essay asked, no essays read. We watched your video and knew." That night, Aunt Gracie wept as though she'd been handed freedom itself. She held that envelope like a life raft. Then came the last day of school. Finally, Alicia chose to wear that same blue dress again, washed and softened, like a uniform of rebirth, not as armor, but as statement. The ceremony took place in the same gym, now stripped of prom glitz, no banners, no crowns, no expectations. There was just a crowd that had decided, this time, it's different. Alicia wasn't called to the stage. She walked there, camera crews and parents aside, just herself and the weight of everything she carried. She lifted the mic. The room waited. "Thank you, not for the applause," she said, voice quiet but unbreakable, "but for staying. Because being here tonight means you chose something bigger than comfort. And being real, that is work. And we're only just beginning." She stepped down. No fireworks, no fanfare. Just grown people, students and staff standing. Not because a button asked them, but because something inside them said, "Yes, this matters." Later, Sarah arrived. Her mother had navigated traffic, heavy with pride and afternoon light. She brought a surprise gift, a framed photo of that debut handmade card from months earlier, with the words, "Your kindness is my light," written sweetly in crayon. Then everyone spilled outside into the true sunlight, warm, honest, with no filters. Prom dresses and slacks, smiles and still traces of laughter, and silence. Not awkward silence, not forced hush, but that rare kind of soft quiet that says everything's okay again. Because the world may know your name now, but best of all, you know it too.